Perhaps you could afford this bracelet if you had a real job, darling. Evelyn Hayes stood in the center of the ballroom as 300 donors turned to watch. Her husband, Marcus, smiled that shark smile, holding up the auction catalog. Diamond tennis bracelet, $40,000. My wife works at a museum. He said it like a punchline. Laughter rippled through the crowd. She catalogs old documents. It's adorable, really, like a hobby. Her face burned. The polka dots on her brown dress suddenly felt childish, cheap. Marcus sipped his scotch. Sweetheart, why don't you stick to the silent auction? I'm sure there's a tote bag in your price range. More laughter. Evelyn's throat closed. She should have been used to this by now. Then the hotel manager appeared at her elbow. Excuse me, Ms. Vandermere? There's a question about the East Wing renovation you approved. The room went silent. Marcus froze mid-sip. I think you have the wrong person. His voice had that edge it got when someone challenged him. This is my wife, Evelyn Hayes. Well, Reynolds now. She doesn't... Vandermere. The manager, Thomas, she'd known him for years, didn't even glance at Marcus. Ms. Vandermere, the contractors need approval on the marble selection for the lobby restoration. The samples are in your office if you have a moment. Every eye in the ballroom fixed on her. Evelyn's pulse hammered in her ears. 5 years. She'd kept this quiet for 5 years, testing, waiting, hoping Marcus would prove her wrong, show her the man she'd thought she married, love her, for something beyond what he thought she could offer him. Indeed, she'd failed her own test by staying this long. Thank you, Thomas. Her voice came out steady, strange. I'll review them Monday. Your office? Marcus's face had gone red. That vein in his temple popped out. What the hell is he talking about? The woman next to them, Caroline Chen, CEO of Chen Properties, made a small sound, recognition dawning. Marcus, Caroline's voice carried across the sudden silence. You didn't know. Know what? He rounded on Evelyn, fingers tight on her arm, too tight. She'd have bruises tomorrow. What is this? Some kind of joke? Evelyn looked at his hand on her arm, at the 2-carat diamond on her finger that he'd presented like he was bestowing a kingdom, at his face, handsome, successful, and right now, afraid. She should feel satisfaction. Instead, she just felt tired. The Grandview Hotel has been in my family since 1948. She kept her voice low, conversational. My grandmother left it to me, along with the Belmont, the Sterling Plaza, and the Roosevelt Arms. Marcus's hand dropped. The retail complex on 5th Street, the Morrison Office Park, Vandermere Towers downtown. She met his eyes. The Reynolds building you're so proud of. You rent 6 floors from my company, have for 3 years. His mouth opened, closed. Wait. This from a man in a gray suit, Stephen Park, Marcus's biggest investor. You're Elizabeth Vandermere's granddaughter? Yes? The Vandermere Properties empire? Stephen's eyes had gone wide. That's 12 buildings in this city alone. The portfolio's worth... I don't discuss numbers at parties. Evelyn's grandmother had taught her that, along with how to spot a fortune hunter, which she'd apparently failed at. Caroline laughed, actually laughed. Oh my God, Marcus, you've been bragging about your real estate empire to your wife's tenant this whole time. The ballroom erupted, whispers cascading like dominoes, phones appearing. This would be everywhere by morning. Marcus grabbed her wrist. We're leaving. Now. No, she said it quietly, but something in her voice made him step back. You asked why I'm here tonight. Evelyn looked around the ballroom, at the banner reading Vandermere Foundation Annual Gala, at the faces she'd known since childhood watching this play out. This is my family's foundation, Marcus. I'm here because my grandmother started this charity 60 years ago. I've chaired it since she died. You told me this was my client's event. You assumed. I didn't correct you? His face had gone from red to white. How long? How long what? How long have you been lying to me? The laugh escaped before she could stop it. Bitter, wrong-sounding. I've never lied to you. You never asked about my family. You saw my job at the museum and decided you knew everything about me. She twisted the wedding ring on her finger. It felt heavy. My name is Evelyn Hayes Vandermere. I use my mother's surname, Hayes, for work, for privacy, to see who people really are when they don't know about the money. You tested me? His voice rose. People were definitely recording now. You set me up? I gave you 5 years to see me, the actual me, not your idea of a nice, quiet wife who should be grateful for your allowance. That landed. She watched him process it, the control he'd held over their finances, the credit card he'd given her like a gift, the way he approved her purchases. She'd never needed his money, not once. Thomas cleared his throat. Ms. Vandermere, I apologize for the interruption, but the contractor's on site. He says the timeline is tight for the renovation. Of course. She turned to Marcus. I need to handle this. Enjoy the auction. Evelyn, it's a lovely event. My grandmother would be proud. She looked at the diamond bracelet in the catalog he still held. That bracelet, I donated it. It was hers. The starting bid is $40,000, but it'll probably go for $60,000. All proceeds go to the women's shelter downtown. She walked away. Her heels clicked on the marble floor. The crowd parted. Behind her she heard Caroline's voice, cheerful and cutting. So, Marcus, about that lease renewal meeting next month. Evelyn made it to the hallway before her hands started shaking. The east wing was quiet. Under renovation, closed to guests. She leaned against the wall, pressed her palms to the cool plaster, and tried to breathe. 5 years. She'd met Marcus at a museum fundraiser. He'd been charming, interested in her work, asked about medieval manuscripts like he actually cared, flowers the next day, dinner that weekend. He'd seemed different from the men who'd circled her family money her whole life. So she'd tested him, introduced herself as Evelyn Hayes, archivist, let him think she lived on a museum salary. Her grandmother had just died, left her everything, and Evelyn needed to know if someone could love her without the weight of the Vandermere name. Marcus had proposed within a year. She'd said yes, kept waiting for the right moment to tell him the truth. But there'd never been a right moment, because slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice, he'd started to diminish her. Her job was cute, her opinions adorable, her financial thoughts. Leave the money stuff to me, sweetheart. The control had tightened like a noose, and she'd let it, watching, documenting, hoping he'd prove her wrong. Ms. Vandermere? She looked up. Thomas stood a respectful distance away. There's no contractor, is there? No, ma'am. I saw the situation and thought you might need an exit. Thank you. For what it's worth? Thomas had worked for her grandmother for 30 years. He'd taught Evelyn how to manage a hotel when she was 16. Mrs. Vandermere would have handled it the same way. She never tolerated a man who didn't respect a woman's mind. Evelyn's eyes burned. She would have done it 5 years sooner. Maybe, but you did it when you were ready. He handed her a handkerchief, monogrammed V, from her grandmother's personal set. Your office is ready whenever you need it, and I've already called security. Mr. Reynolds won't be allowed past the lobby without your approval. He'll go home. The penthouse suite, Thomas raised an eyebrow. That's in your name, ma'am, not his. I took the liberty of having the locks changed this afternoon. His things will be boxed and available for pickup tomorrow. Evelyn stared at him. You changed the locks before the gala? I've worked for the Vandermere family for 3 decades. I know the look of a woman preparing to reclaim her life. He smiled, gentle. Besides, I heard him on the phone yesterday, talking to that secretary of his, the one who answers his cell at midnight. The affair. Right. That too. She should feel something about that. Betrayal. Hurt. Instead, it was just another piece of evidence. Thank you, Thomas. Shall I have your car brought around? No, I'm going back to the gala. She straightened her dress. The polka dots didn't look childish anymore. They looked like armor. It's my family's foundation. I'm not leaving. Very good, ma'am. She walked back into the ballroom with her head high. Marcus was gone. So were several of his business associates. But Caroline Chen stood near the bar, and when she saw Evelyn, she raised her glass. That, Caroline said, was the most spectacular thing I've ever seen. It wasn't meant to be spectacular. The best ones never are. Caroline handed her a glass of champagne. For what it's worth, half the people in this room are calling their lawyers. Your husband, sorry, soon-to-be ex-husband, has apparently been very creative with his lease agreements. There are questions about whether his financial statements to investors were accurate. He inflated his assets? He claimed ownership of properties he rents, buildings with your family name on the deed. Caroline's smile was sharp. That's fraud, Evelyn. Securities fraud if he used those statements to attract investment. Evelyn sipped the champagne. It was the expensive kind, her family's kind. Tomorrow she'd call her lawyer, start divorce proceedings, or audit every one of Marcus's deals that touched her properties. But tonight she stood in the ballroom her grandmother had loved, surrounded by people who'd known her family for generations, and let herself breathe. The auction started. The diamond bracelet came up. Caroline bid. So did 3 others. It sold for $72,000. When the auctioneer announced the winner, Caroline winked at Evelyn and mouthed, "For your grandma." Evelyn's throat went tight. The gala continued around her. Music, laughter, the clink of glasses. People approached carefully, offering congratulations on the foundation's work, not mentioning what they'd witnessed. This crowd understood discretion. Her phone buzzed. "Marcus, we need to talk. Come home." She blocked the number. A second buzz. Marcus's business partner, Gerald. "Please call. Marcus is threatening to sue you for fraud. He's not thinking clearly." She blocked that number too. By midnight, the gala wound down. Evelyn stood in the empty ballroom, watching the cleanup crew work. "Long night?" Thomas appeared with coffee. Real coffee, not the decaf the gala had served. "The longest?" "It gets easier." "Does it?" Mrs. Vandermere left her husband after 20 years, caught him embezzling from the business. She said walking away was the hardest thing she'd ever done. Thomas poured cream into her coffee, the way she liked it. But 6 months later, she told me it was also the most honest. She stopped pretending, stopped hoping he'd change, started living the life she deserved. Evelyn's grandmother had never talked about her first husband. Evelyn had found the divorce papers in the archives once, not tucked between property deeds. What happened to him? Prison, eventually. The embezzling caught up with him. Thomas's voice was matter of fact. Mrs. Vandermere didn't press charges herself, but she didn't protect him either. She let the truth surface. Evelyn drank her coffee. It burned going down, felt good. "Go home, Ms. Vandermere. Tomorrow's soon enough to deal with the rest." "Home," she repeated. The penthouse, Marcus's things already boxed. Right. She drove through empty streets. The city looked different at this hour. Quieter, hers. The penthouse felt huge without Marcus's presence filling it, his cologne gone from the bathroom, his suits missing from the closet, just spaces where he used to be. Evelyn stood at the window overlooking the city. 14 buildings visible from here. 7 carried the Vandermere name on their deeds. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Ms. Vandermere, this is Detective Sarah Morris, Financial Crimes Division. I apologize for the late call, but we've received some concerning information regarding Marcus Reynolds and potential securities fraud. Would you be available to speak with us tomorrow?" Evelyn's reflection stared back at her from the dark window. Professional, calm, ready. "Yes," she said, "I would." Detective Morris had kind eyes and a recorder that clicked when she set it on the conference table. "Thank you for coming in, Ms. Vandermere." She slid a folder across the polished wood. "We've been investigating Mr. Reynolds' investment firm for 6 months. Your revelation at the gala last night accelerated our timeline." Evelyn opened the folder. Financial statements, property valuations, Marcus's signature on documents claiming ownership of buildings he'd never owned. Her buildings. He told investors he owned the Reynolds building outright, listed it as a company asset worth $42 million. Detective Morris tapped a page. "But you own it. He's your tenant." "Yes." "Did you know he was misrepresenting his assets?" "Not until 3 months ago." Evelyn's throat felt dry. "I was reviewing my property manager's reports, noticed irregularities in how he referred to his lease, started asking questions." "But you didn't report it." "I wanted to be sure." She met the detective's eyes. "And I wanted documentation, everything." Detective Morris leaned back. "You've been building a case. I've been protecting myself." The detective's expression shifted, something like understanding. "How long have you been married?" 5 years. "And he didn't know about your family's assets for all 5 years?" "He never asked the right questions." Evelyn's hand stayed steady on the table. "I told him my name was Evelyn Hayes. It is. It's my mother's surname. I use it professionally for privacy. He assumed I had nothing. I didn't correct him." "That's not fraud." "I know." She'd checked with 3 lawyers. "But he'll claim it is." "Let him." Detective Morris pulled out another folder. Thicker. We have 12 investors who filed complaints. They invested based on financial statements that listed your properties as his assets. That's securities fraud, Ms. Vandermere. If he goes after you, we bury him. Evelyn looked at the folder, thought about Marcus's face last night, the shock, the anger, the fear. Well, what do you need from me? Everything. Property deeds, lease agreements, communication records, anything that shows he knew he didn't own those buildings but claimed them anyway. I have it all, Detective Morris smiled. I thought you might. The law offices of Bennett and Shore occupied 3 floors of a building Evelyn's grandmother had owned. Her lawyer, Patricia Shore, had handled Vandermere business for 20 years. He's threatening to sue for fraud, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Patricia slid the legal filing across her desk. Claims you deliberately deceived him about your finances to trap him in marriage. Evelyn scanned the document. Marcus's lawyer had used a lot of words to say very little. Can he win? Not a chance. Patricia's smile was sharp. You used your legal name. Never lied about your assets. He never asked. You never volunteered. That's not fraud. That's privacy. As for emotional distress, she laughed, we have 5 years of financial control, belittling behavior, and witnesses to public humiliation. If anyone has a case for emotional distress, it's you. And the affair? His secretary confirmed it this morning. Sang like a bird once she realized he'd been lying to her too. Told her he was divorced apparently. Patricia made a note. We can use that for the divorce. New York isn't a pure no-fault state anymore, but adultery still matters for equitable distribution. Evelyn's phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. You ruined my life. I gave you everything. She showed Patricia. Save that. Screenshot it. We're building a harassment file. Patricia's voice went hard. Ma, I'm getting you a restraining order. Today. Is that necessary? A man who controlled your finances for 5 years just lost all his power. Yes, it's necessary. She stood. Come on. Courthouse opens in 20 minutes. The restraining order was temporary. 7 days until the hearing. But it meant Marcus couldn't contact her, couldn't come within 500 feet. It meant she could breathe. Evelyn went to the museum that afternoon. Her office sat tucked in the back, surrounded by manuscripts that had survived centuries. She'd always felt safe here. Her boss, Dr. Raymond Chen, Caroline's father, knocked on the open door. Quite the weekend you've had. That's one way to put it. Evelyn carefully set down the 15th century text she'd been cataloging. I'm sorry if it affects the museum. The publicity. Are you kidding? Our donation calls have tripled. He sat in the chair across from her desk. Turns out people love supporting institutions run by women who take down arrogant men. Despite everything, she smiled. Carolyn told me what happened, the whole thing. He paused. I've known you for 8 years, Evelyn. You're brilliant at this work. You don't do it for fun or to pass time. No. So why didn't you tell anyone? About your family? She looked at the manuscript in front of her. Illuminated letters, gold leaf, made by hands that had been dust for 600 years. Work that mattered beyond money. Because this is real. My work here is mine, not my grandmother's legacy or my family name. Just me. She traced the edge of the page protector. Everything else in my life came with conditions, expectations. But here, I'm just good at my job. You're exceptional at your job. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle. And that doesn't change because of your last name. Her eyes burned. She blinked hard. Take the week off. Deal with your personal situation. He stood. But Evelyn, you have a place here as long as you want it. Hayes, Vandermere, or anything else you choose to call yourself. After he left, she sat in the quiet. The manuscript needed 3 more days of documentation. After that, it would join the permanent collection. Outlast all of them. Her phone rang. Patricia. Marcus violated the restraining order, showed up at the Grandview an hour ago demanding to see you. Thomas called the police. He's been arrested. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Is Thomas okay? Fine. Shaken, but fine. Marcus tried to force his way past the front desk. Patricia's voice was tight. The police found him carrying a gun, Evelyn. Unregistered. He's being charged with criminal contempt and weapons possession. The room tilted. "Evelyn, you still there?" He had a gun. Security footage shows he never drew it, but he had it. And given his state of mind, the judge is likely to extend the restraining order indefinitely. After she hung up, Evelyn sat very still. Marcus had carried a gun to her hotel, to confront her, to... What? She'd lived with him for 5 years, slept beside him, trusted him with her body if not her whole truth, and she'd never really known him at all. Over the next week, the story spread. Not the tabloid version, those came too, full of speculation and invented details. But the real story? Oak whispered through New York's business circles. Marcus Reynolds had built his empire on lies, properties he didn't own, assets he'd inflated, investors he'd defrauded, and his wife, quiet, unassuming Evelyn, owned half the buildings in his portfolio. The calls started coming. Business calls, reporters wanting interviews, investment firms asking to meet, people who'd known her grandmother offering condolences she should have received 3 years ago but had hidden from while she played house with Marcus. Caroline invited her to lunch at a restaurant Evelyn hadn't been to since her grandmother died. The maitre d' recognized her immediately. "Ms. Vandermere, your grandmother's usual table." Evelyn's throat closed. "Yes, thank you." The table overlooked the park. Her grandmother had eaten lunch here every Thursday for 40 years. Caroline ordered wine. Good wine. "So, how does it feel?" "How does what feel?" "Being yourself again." Evelyn looked out at the park. Early autumn, leaves just starting to turn. The same view her grandmother had loved. "Terrifying," she admitted. "I've been Evelyn Hayes for so long. The quiet archivist, the woman who didn't make waves. You made waves Saturday night. I defended myself. That's different." "Is it?" Caroline sipped her wine. "My father told me what you said, about your work being yours, not your family's. It's true. I get it. I spent 10 years trying to prove I earned my position at Chen Properties, that I wasn't just Dad's daughter." She smiled. "But here's what I learned. You can be both, the brilliant archivist and the Vandermere heiress. They're both you." "Marcus made me feel like I had to choose." "Marcus made you feel small so he could feel big." Caroline's voice went hard. "That's on him, not you." The food came. Evelyn picked at her salad, not tasting it. "The detective called again this morning. They're filing formal charges against Marcus, securities fraud, investor fraud, and about 6 other things I didn't understand." She set down her fork. "His lawyer wants to make a deal. Reduce charges if Marcus provides information about his business partners. Will you let him?" "It's not up to me. But Detective Morris asked if I'd be willing to testify." Evelyn met Caroline's eyes. "At a trial. Public testimony about our marriage, our finances, everything." "What did you say?" "I said yes." Caroline raised her glass. To women who tell the truth." Evelyn clinked her glass against Caroline's. The wine was good. Her grandmother's favorite vintage. "There's something else." She pulled out her phone, showed Caroline an email. "The Vandermere Foundation Board wants to meet. They've been running on autopilot since my grandmother died. They want me to take over as active chair." "Will you?" "I don't know. It's a full-time job. I'd have to leave the museum." "Would you? Have to leave?" Caroline leaned forward. "Or could you do both? Plenty of people sit on nonprofit boards while maintaining careers." "Not as active chair." "Then make it work differently. It's your foundation, Evelyn, your rules." The idea settled into her mind. Uncomfortable. Possible. My grandmother would know what to do. "Your grandmother," Caroline said gently. "Tiap would tell you to trust yourself. She left everything to you for a reason." That night, Evelyn stood in her grandmother's office at the Grandview. Thomas had kept it exactly as Elizabeth Vandermere had left it. Mahogany desk, leather chair worn soft from decades of use. Photos on the walls, buildings, family, moments frozen in black and white. One photo caught her eye. Her grandmother at 30, standing in front of the Grandview on opening day. Young, uncertain, determined. Evelyn picked up the phone, called Patricia. "I want to counter-sue for financial abuse, emotional distress, and fraudulent misrepresentation of our marital assets." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure? Criminal charges might be enough." "I'm sure. He controlled every dollar I spent for 5 years, made me feel like I should be grateful." "You humiliated me publicly." Her voice stayed steady. "I want it on the record, all of it. Okay? We'll file Monday." After she hung up, Evelyn sat in her grandmother's chair. It fit better than she'd expected. Her phone buzzed, a text from Dr. Chen. The board approved a new position, Director of Special Collections and Philanthropy. Museum work 3 days a week, foundation work 2 days. Interested? Evelyn looked around the office, at the buildings visible through the window, at her grandmother's determined face in the photograph. She typed back, yes. Outside, the city glittered. Hers. Finally. The deposition took place in a conference room that smelled like old carpet and coffee that had been sitting too long. Marcus sat across the table with his lawyer, a thin man named Robert Fisher, who'd made a career defending white-collar criminals. Evelyn hadn't seen Marcus in 2 weeks. He looked smaller somehow. His suit was expensive but wrinkled. The confident smile that had charmed her 6 years ago was gone, replaced by something harder. Patricia sat beside her, crisp and professional. For the record, this is the deposition of Marcus Anthony Reynolds in the matter of Reynolds versus Vandermere, case number. Can we skip the formalities? Fisher interrupted. My client is willing to drop the lawsuit if Ms. Vandermere agrees to certain conditions. Patricia didn't blink. Such as? Public statement clarifying that their marriage was based on mutual misunderstanding, not fraud. Division of assets acquired during the marriage, and Ms. Vandermere's agreement not to pursue criminal charges. No, Evelyn said. Fisher looked at her for the first time. Ms. Vandermere, I understand you're angry. I'm not pursuing criminal charges. The state is. That has nothing to do with me. She kept her hands flat on the table. Steady. And I won't issue a statement suggesting our marriage was mutual anything. He controlled our finances, humiliated me publicly, used my properties to defraud investors. Those are facts. Marcus's jaw clenched. I didn't know they were your properties. You knew you didn't own them. You signed lease agreements every year. I thought we owned them together, as a married couple. Patricia pulled out a file. Mr. Reynolds, did you ever add your wife's name to a single bank account? Silence. Did you ever discuss your business dealings with her? She wasn't interested in business. Did you ask? Marcus's face reddened. She had her little museum job. I handled the real work. Evelyn felt Patricia's hand on her arm. A warning, don't react. Mr. Reynolds, how much was your wife's allowance? That's not relevant. How much? $2,000 a month. He said it like it was generous, for personal expenses. And how much did you spend monthly on personal expenses? Fisher leaned forward. Counselor, my client's spending habits, $47,000. Patricia slid a document across the table. Credit card statements, dinners, golf memberships, your car lease, clothing, $47,000 monthly. While your wife, who owns properties worth over $300 million, received $2,000. The number hung in the air. Marcus stared at the paper. I was supporting our lifestyle. With rent money you paid to her company. Using investor funds you obtained through fraud. Patricia's voice stayed level. Mr. Reynolds, when did you first become aware that your wife owned the Vandermere Properties portfolio? At the gala. You never suspected, never noticed that Vandermere was her middle name on the marriage certificate? His eyes flicked to Evelyn. She told me it was her grandmother's maiden name, for sentimental reasons. And you never researched your wife's family? Why would I? She worked at a museum, lived in a small apartment when we met. His voice rose. She lied about who she was. She used her legal name, listed her occupation accurately, maintained separate finances, which you controlled despite the assets being hers. Patricia closed the file. That's not fraud, Mr. Reynolds. But that's a woman protecting herself from a man who proved he couldn't be trusted with the truth. Fisher stood. This deposition is over. We'll see you in court. As they left, Marcus paused at the door. I loved you. Evelyn met his eyes. No, you loved the idea of me, the quiet wife who didn't challenge you, who made you feel important. Her voice didn't shake. You never knew me at all. The Vandermere Foundation Gala had been rescheduled for the following Saturday. The board insisted Evelyn attend as chair, her first public appearance in the role. She stood in her grandmother's closet at the penthouse, looking at dresses that had survived decades. Her grandmother had been taller, broader, but the seamstress had worked magic. The emerald gown fit perfectly. Caroline arrived at 6 to help with hair and makeup. You look like her. On your grandmother. Is that good? Are you kidding? Elizabeth Vandermere was terrifying and brilliant. Yes, it's good. Caroline pinned the last curl. Nervous? Terrified. Good. Use it. The gala was at the Grandview, in the ballroom where everything had changed 2 weeks ago. Evelyn walked into a room full of faces she'd known her whole life. Foundation board members, major donors, business leaders who'd worked with her grandmother. They applauded when they saw her. The sound washed over her, unexpected and overwhelming. She'd spent 5 years making herself invisible. Being seen felt strange. Board President Margaret Walsh, 72 and sharp as glass, took her arm. Your grandmother would be so proud. I'm not sure about that. She'd be furious you waited 5 years to dump that idiot husband. But she'd be proud you finally did it. Margaret's smile was warm. Welcome home, Evelyn. The gala moved around her. People approached carefully, respectfully, not asking about Marcus or the scandal, instead talking about foundation programs, her grandmother's legacy, future plans. Evelyn found herself relaxing into it. These were her people, her world. Then Stephen Park appeared, Marcus's biggest investor. Ms. Vandermere, could I have a moment? Caroline tensed beside her, but Evelyn nodded. Of course. Stephen led her to a quiet corner. I owe you an apology. I invested $12 million with your husband based on financial statements I now know were fraudulent. I should have done better due diligence. That's not my fault. No, but some of my investment went toward the lifestyle he maintained, the lifestyle that... He paused. I met you several times, at his office, at events. He introduced you as his wife who worked at a museum. I never looked deeper, never asked questions. Why would you? Because I should have seen it, the way he talked about you. Dismissed you. Stephen's voice went quiet. My daughter's getting her MBA. She's brilliant. And I realized after your revelation that I've been introducing her the same way Marcus introduced you. My daughter, she's in school. Like it's cute. Like she's not going to run my company someday. Evelyn's throat tightened. So thank you for the wake-up call. And I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening right in front of me. After he left, Caroline handed her champagne. That was unexpected. Yeah. You okay? Evelyn looked around the ballroom. Not at the banner reading, Vandermere Foundation, 60 years of service. At the faces of people her grandmother had trusted, who now looked to her. I think so. The speeches started at 8. Margaret spoke about the foundation's history, the programs funded, the lives changed. Then she introduced Evelyn. The walk to the podium felt endless. Evelyn's prepared remarks sat in her pocket, carefully written, approved by the board. She didn't use them. My grandmother started this foundation 60 years ago with a simple idea, that people with resources have a responsibility to use them well. Her voice carried across the silent room. She believed in education, in opportunity, in giving people the tools to build their own futures. She paused, found her courage. For the last 5 years, I've been hiding. From this legacy, from this responsibility, from myself. I told myself I was testing someone, protecting my privacy. But really, I was afraid I couldn't live up to my grandmother's example, afraid of failing. The room was completely still. 2 weeks ago, I stopped hiding, not because I was ready, because I didn't have a choice anymore. And I learned something important. She looked at Margaret, at Caroline, at the faces watching her. My grandmother didn't build this empire by waiting until she was ready. She built it by doing the work even when she was terrified. She pulled out her phone, showed the screen to the room. This is my resignation letter from the foundation. I wrote it 3 days ago, convinced myself I wasn't qualified to lead. Someone gasped. I'm not sending it, because being qualified isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, doing the work, learning as you go. She set the phone down. So I'm here. I'm scared. I'm learning. And I'm committed to continuing my grandmother's legacy in my own way. The applause started slow, then built. People stood. Evelyn's hands shook, but she smiled. After the gala, Thomas found her in the lobby. Ms. Vandermere, there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent. The woman waiting in Evelyn's office was young, mid-20s, nervous. professional clothes that didn't quite fit. Ms. Vandermere, I'm Jessica Chen. I worked for Marcus, the secretary, the affair. I know who you are. Jessica's face crumpled. I didn't know he was married, not at first. He said he was divorced, that his ex-wife was trying to ruin him. She twisted her hands together. When I found out the truth, after the gala, I wanted to quit, but then I found something. She pulled out a folder. Marcus has been moving money, lots of money, offshore accounts, shell companies. I think he's trying to hide assets before the divorce. Evelyn took the folder. Bank statements, transfer records, incorporation documents for companies she'd never heard of. Why are you giving this to me? Because he lied to both of us. And because, Jessica's voice broke. My mom was in an abusive relationship, financial abuse. He controlled everything, just like Marcus controlled you. When she finally left, he'd hidden everything. She got nothing. I'm not your mother. No, you have resources, lawyers, a chance to fight back. Jessica stood. I'm testifying for the prosecution against Marcus, but I wanted you to have this first for your divorce. After she left, Evelyn called Patricia. He's moving assets. Jessica Chen just brought me evidence. Patricia was quiet for a moment. We need to file an emergency motion, freeze everything, tonight. Can we do that? If you can prove he's deliberately hiding marital assets? Absolutely. Patricia's voice turned sharp. Send me everything Jessica gave you. I'll have papers filed within 2 hours. Evelyn photographed every page, sent them through. Then she sat in her grandmother's chair, looking at the evidence of Marcus's desperation. He was scrambling, scared, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. Good. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Ms. Vandermere, this is Agent Michael Torres, FBI. We'd like to speak with you about your husband's business practices, specifically potential money laundering and wire fraud. The FBI. Marcus's crimes went deeper than she'd known. When? Evelyn asked. Tomorrow morning, if possible. We have evidence suggesting he's been running a scheme for years. Your properties were central to it. I'll be there. After she hung up, Evelyn looked out at the city. Lights everywhere, her buildings among them. Marcus had used her properties, her name, her quiet compliance. But he'd miscalculated. Badly. Because the quiet woman he'd dismissed had been documenting everything, building a case, protecting herself. And now the truth was coming for him. The FBI field office was nothing like the movies. Just fluorescent lights and beige walls and Agent Torres with coffee stains on his tie. Thank you for coming in, Ms. Vandermere. He spread files across the table, photos of Marcus, our bank statements, property records. How much do you know about your husband's real estate investment fund? Not much. He never discussed business with me. That tracks. Agent Torres pulled out a diagram, lines connecting names, companies, properties. Reynolds Capital Management promised investors returns of 12 to 15% annually, guaranteed, based on real estate holdings. That's not possible. Exactly. Real estate doesn't generate guaranteed returns. He tapped the diagram. So Marcus got creative. He'd show investors properties, your properties, as fund assets, collect their money, pay early investors with new investor money. Evelyn's stomach dropped. A Ponzi scheme. A sophisticated one. He'd actually lease space in the buildings, run legitimate businesses out of them. And to keep the fraud hidden, Agent Torres met her eyes. Until investors started asking to tour the properties, wanted to see their investments. What happened? Marcus told them the buildings were undergoing renovation, asbestos issues, whatever excuse worked. He pulled out another file. But 3 months ago, an investor hired a private investigator, discovered the buildings weren't owned by Reynolds Capital. They were owned by Vandermere Properties. He came to me, Evelyn remembered, a man in her museum office asking strange questions about her grandmother's real estate holdings. She'd thought he was researching local history. I didn't understand what he was asking. He reported back to his client. The client confronted Marcus. Marcus paid him off, $2 million to stay quiet. We have the wire transfer. $2 million, and to hide the truth. How much money did he steal? Agent Torres was quiet for a moment. We've identified 43 investors. Total funds collected over 5 years, $87 million. The room spun. Most of it's gone, spent on lifestyle payoffs and moving money offshore. We've recovered about 12 million. The rest? He shrugged. We're working on it. The people who invested, they'll lose everything. Most of them. Unless we can claw back funds from the offshore accounts. That takes years. Evelyn thought about Stephen Park. $12 million. Gone. What do you need from me? Everything. Property records showing you're the actual owner. Lease agreements Marcus signed. Any communication about the buildings. Any time he mentioned investors or the fund. I have most of that. Good. Because we're building a case for wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering. We want to make sure it sticks. Agent Torres leaned forward. Ms. Vandermere, your husband is looking at 20 years minimum. More if we can prove he knew from the start this was fraud. He knew. Can you prove it? Evelyn pulled out her phone, opened her email. 3 years ago, Marcus asked me to sign a document, said it was a routine lease renewal for the Reynolds building. I read it carefully. Always do. It wasn't a lease renewal. It was a quitclaim deed transferring ownership to him. Agent Torres went very still. I refused to sign. We had a fight. He said I didn't understand business, that married couples should share assets, that I was being paranoid. She found the email. The next day, he apologized, said I was right, he'd been confused. But I kept the document and his emails about it. She forwarded everything to Agent Torres. He read in silence. Then, this is dated 6 months after he started the fund. Yes, he was trying to actually acquire ownership to make the fraud legitimate retroactively. I think so. Agent Torres smiled, sharp and satisfied. Ms. Vandermere, you just gave us proof of intent. He knew he was lying to investors and tried to cover it up. He stood, extended his hand. Thank you, seriously. Patricia filed the emergency motion that afternoon. By evening, a judge had frozen all of Marcus's accounts, domestic and the offshore ones they could identify. The next morning, Marcus's lawyer called. My client wants to negotiate. Patricia put the phone on speaker. Evelyn sat across the desk, hands folded. Negotiate what, Mr. Fisher? A settlement. Ms. Vandermere drops the countersuit, agrees to a clean divorce with no financial claims, and my client pleads guilty to reduce charges. No, Evelyn said. Fisher's voice hardened. Ms. Vandermere, you're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. My client is willing to walk away from any claim to your assets. He has no claim to my assets. They were never his. In a community property state, New York isn't community property, and everything I own was acquired before the marriage or through inheritance. He gets nothing. Evelyn's voice stayed level. Tell Marcus I'll see him at trial. After Patricia hung up, she smiled. You're getting good at this. I had good teachers. Evelyn looked out the window, the Reynolds building visible in the distance. How many investors contacted you? 17 so far, and asking if they can join the civil suit against Marcus. Can they? Normally no, but given the scope of the fraud, we might be able to structure it as a class action. Patricia made a note. It would take years. Most of them won't recover their money. What if I paid them back? Patricia's pen stopped. What? The investors. What if Vandermere Properties covered their losses? Evelyn, that's not your responsibility. Marcus defrauded them, not you. He used my buildings, my name, indirectly. My properties to convince them the fund was legitimate. She met Patricia's eyes. I can afford it, and it's the right thing to do. That's $87 million. I know. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Your grandmother would have done the same thing. Maybe. Or maybe she would have let them suffer the consequences of bad judgment. Evelyn smiled slightly. But I'm not my grandmother. I'm me. All right. I'll draw up a proposal. Victim Compensation Fund, administered by an independent trustee. Full restitution to investors who cooperate with the FBI investigation. And one more thing. Evelyn pulled out a list. These are Marcus's business partners, the ones who helped him run the fund. I want them investigated too. Patricia took the list, scanned it. Some of these people are very powerful. I know. They'll fight back. Hard. Let them. The story broke that evening. Not through tabloids or gossip sites, but through the Wall Street Journal. Vandermere Heiress offers full restitution to fraud victims. The article detailed Marcus's Ponzi scheme, the FBI investigation, and Evelyn's unprecedented offer to make investors whole. By midnight, it had gone viral. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing, news outlets wanting interviews, investors crying with relief, business leaders calling her a hero. She turned her phone off. Caroline showed up at the penthouse with wine and takeout. "You're trending on every platform. Do you know what people are saying?" "I don't want to know. They're calling you the anti-Elizabeth Holmes, the honest billionaire, the woman who chose integrity over wealth." "I didn't choose integrity over wealth. I have both." Evelyn picked at her pad thai, couldn't taste it. "I just don't want people to suffer because of who I married." "That's literally choosing integrity." Caroline poured wine. "Do you have any idea how rare that is? How many wealthy people would just let the victims twist?" "Most of them?" "All of them. Evelyn, what you're doing is extraordinary." It didn't feel extraordinary. It felt necessary. Her phone buzzed. She'd forgotten to silence it completely. A text from an unknown number. "You think you're a hero? You enabled this. You knew what he was, and you did nothing. Those people lost everything because you were too weak to stop him." Her hands went cold. A second text. "You're as guilty as he is." Caroline took the phone, read the messages. Her face went hard. "We're calling the police. It's just trolls. It's harassment and possibly witness intimidation." She was already dialing. "You're the key witness in a federal fraud case. This isn't a joke." The police came, took statements, traced the number to a burner phone, promised to investigate. After they left, Evelyn stood at the window. The city looked different at night, colder. "Do you think they're right?" she asked quietly. "Who?" "The messages. I knew something was wrong. I knew Marcus was controlling, dismissive. I documented it, but I stayed." "You were protecting yourself, building evidence." "Or I was too scared to leave." Evelyn's reflection stared back at her. "Maybe if I'd left sooner, reported him sooner, those investors wouldn't have lost their money." Caroline came to stand beside her. "You can't think like that. Marcus made his choices. You're not responsible for his crimes." "But I enabled them. By being the quiet wife. By not asking questions." "You asked questions. He shut you down. There's a difference between enabling and being a victim." Caroline's voice went soft. "Evelyn, Chad, you're doing everything right now. Making it right. That's what matters." But the doubt lingered. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. Marcus would appear in federal court and the charges would be formally read. Patricia warned her, "He's going to see you there. Be prepared." Evelyn spent the week preparing differently. She met with each investor who'd contacted her, listened to their stories. Stephen Park had invested his retirement, $12 million saved over 40 years. Margaret Walsh's nephew had invested his inheritance, $3 million from his grandmother's estate. A couple in their 60s had invested their life savings, $2 million. They'd planned to retire that year. Every story cut deeper. On the morning of the hearing, Evelyn wore her grandmother's pearls, professional suit. Hair pulled back. The armor of competence. The courthouse was packed. Media everywhere. She walked through the crowd with Patricia at her side, ignoring the shouted questions. The courtroom was smaller than she expected. Marcus sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit. He'd lost weight. His eyes were hollow. When he saw her, something flickered across his face. Anger, hurt. She couldn't tell. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The United States of America versus Marcus Anthony Reynolds. Charges include wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The prosecutor outlined the case. $87 million, 43 victims, 5 years of systematic deception. Marcus's lawyer argued for bail. "My client has deep ties to the community. No criminal record." "Todd, he's not a flight risk," the prosecutor countered. "The defendant has already attempted to move assets offshore. He has the means and motivation to flee. The government requests he be held without bail." The judge agreed. As they led Marcus away, he looked at Evelyn, mouthed something she couldn't hear. Patricia touched her arm. "You okay?" "What did he say?" "I don't know. Does it matter?" Evelyn watched until he disappeared through the door. Number. It didn't matter anymore. The panic attack hit on a Tuesday. Evelyn was at the museum, cataloging a collection of letters from the Revolutionary War. Her hands were steady, her mind focused. Then she read a line about a woman whose husband had gambled away their farm. I knew his nature, and yet I bound myself to him. The fault is mine as much as his. The words blurred. Her chest tightened, and she couldn't breathe. Dr. Chen found her in the bathroom 20 minutes later, sitting on the floor with her head between her knees. Evelyn? I can't. The words wouldn't come. I can't breathe. He sat beside her, didn't touch her, just breathed slowly, audibly, until her lungs remembered how. Better? She nodded, lied. When's the last time you slept? She couldn't remember. Ate a full meal? I don't know. Dr. Chen stood, offered his hand. Come on, we're going to my office. You're taking the rest of the week off. I can't. The trial prep will wait. Evelyn, you're running on empty. I can see it. His voice was kind but firm. You've been holding everything together for everyone else. The investors, the foundation, the legal teams. When was the last time someone took care of you? She started crying. But right there in the museum bathroom, with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the smell of industrial soap everywhere. Dr. Chen handed her tissues. Waited. I keep thinking, she managed finally, about all the things I should have done differently. Should have left Marcus sooner. Should have reported him. Should have protected those people. You couldn't have known. I knew enough. I knew he was cruel, controlling. I documented it all, but I stayed. What does that make me? Human. He helped her stand. It makes you human, Evelyn. Not a villain, not an enabler. Just a person who was trying to survive a difficult situation. But the guilt didn't listen to logic. She went home. The penthouse felt too big, too quiet. Every room held memories she didn't want. Marcus proposing in the living room. Down on one knee with a ring he'd probably bought with stolen money. Marcus yelling in the bedroom about her paranoia when she'd questioned a business deal. Marcus's cologne still faint in the bathroom, even though Thomas had removed all his belongings weeks ago. She couldn't stay here. Caroline found her packing at midnight. Where are you going? I don't know. Somewhere else. Anywhere else. Evelyn. I can't be here. Her hands shook as she folded a sweater. Every corner of this place is him, his choices, his lies. I thought I could reclaim it, but I can't. Caroline took the sweater from her hands. So don't. Stay with me tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out something better. I have 14 properties. I should be able to find somewhere. You need a friend, not a property. Caroline zipped the suitcase. Come on. Caroline's apartment was smaller, warmer, books everywhere, plants that actually thrived. It smelled like jasmine tea and didn't hold any ghosts. Evelyn slept for 14 hours. When she woke, Caroline had left a note. At work. Coffee's ready. Stay as long as you need. There's leftover lasagna in the fridge. Dad made it, so you know it's good. Evelyn sat in the quiet apartment and felt the weight of everything settle. $87 million in losses, 43 families devastated, years of fraud she'd lived beside without seeing. Her phone rang. Patricia. The prosecution wants you to testify at trial, not just about the property ownership, about your marriage, the control, the financial abuse. They think it establishes pattern of behavior. When? 3 weeks. Are you up for it? Evelyn looked around Caroline's apartment, at the life her friend had built, honest, simple, hers. I don't know. That's okay. You don't have to decide now. Patricia paused. But Evelyn, the victims want you there. They've been calling. They say seeing you testify would help, knowing you're fighting too. After she hung up, Evelyn made coffee, drank it standing at Caroline's window, looking out at a city that suddenly felt overwhelming. Her phone buzzed, a letter from Marcus forwarded through his lawyer. Evelyn, I know you won't forgive me. I don't deserve it, but I need you to understand something. When I met you, I was drowning. My company was failing. I had debts I couldn't pay. And then there you were, smart, kind, content with so little. I convinced myself that if I could just build something big enough, impressive enough, I'd be worthy of you. Everything I did trying to be the man I thought you deserved. Someone successful, powerful, someone who could give you the world. I didn't know you already owned it. The fraud started small. One lie to one investor, then another. It spiraled. By the time I understood what I'd become, I was in too deep to stop. I kept thinking I could fix it, Make the returns real. Pay everyone back. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to understand. I loved you. I still love you. And I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to be honest. Evelyn read it twice, 3 times. It was manipulation. She knew that intellectually. A last attempt to make her doubt herself, to shoulder some of his guilt. But part of her, the part that had loved him once, that had believed his charm, whispered that maybe he was right. Maybe if she'd been different, less secretive, more trusting, he wouldn't have felt the need to lie. She called her therapist, made an emergency appointment. Dr. Sarah Kim's office was in a building Evelyn's grandmother had owned. The irony wasn't lost on her. Tell me what you're feeling. Guilty, responsible, like I should have known. Evelyn twisted her wedding ring. She still wore it, couldn't quite bring herself to take it off. Marcus sent a letter. He says he lied because he wanted to be worthy of me, that the fraud spiraled out of control. Do you believe him? I don't know. Maybe. He was drowning financially when we met. I knew that much. She looked at Dr. Kim. What if I'm the reason he did this? What if knowing I had money he couldn't access drove him to... Stop. Dr. Kim's voice was gentle but firm. Evelyn, I'm going to say something that might be hard to hear. Are you ready? She nodded. Marcus's choices are his own. His decision to commit fraud, to lie to investors, to control and belittle you, those are his choices, not consequences of your behavior. Dr. Kim leaned forward. You didn't make him steal $87 million. You didn't make him emotionally abuse you. You didn't make him carry a gun to your hotel. But if I'd been honest from the start, then he might have married you for your money instead of marrying you despite thinking you had none? Would that be better? Dr. Kim's eyes were kind. Evelyn, you tested him. He failed. That's data, not cause. The victims are victims of Marcus's choices, not yours. She paused. Let me ask you something. If a friend came to you with this situation, husband defrauded investors using her property without her knowledge, would you blame her? No, of course not. Then why are you blaming yourself? Evelyn's throat closed. Because I should have been smarter, stronger, should have left the first time he dismissed my opinion or controlled my spending. Should have. 2 words that carry more guilt than any confession. Dr. Kim handed her tissues. You did what you could with the information you had. You documented abuse. You protected your assets. You refused to sign away your property. And when you found out about the fraud, you did everything right. You're making victims whole. Testifying. That's not the behavior of someone who enabled a crime. Then why do I feel like I did? Because you're human. And because abusers are very good at making their victims feel responsible for the abuse. Dr. Kim's voice softened. Marcus's letter is a manipulation tactic, making you question yourself, making his crimes about his feelings for you. Don't let him rewrite history. Evelyn wiped her eyes. How do I stop feeling like this? Time, therapy, and actively choosing to reject the narrative he's trying to sell you. Dr. Kim smiled slightly. The fact that you're here asking these questions means you're already doing the work. That night, Evelyn sat in Caroline's apartment and wrote a letter she'd never send. Marcus, you say you loved me, but love doesn't control. Love doesn't diminish. Love doesn't use someone's property to defraud innocent people and then blame the victim for existing. You didn't commit fraud because I had money you didn't know about. You committed fraud because you wanted power, status, admiration, because you were willing to destroy lives to maintain an image. I'm done carrying your guilt. I'm done questioning my choices. I protected myself the only way I knew how, and I won't apologize for that. I hope you find whatever peace is possible in prison, but you won't find it by blaming me. Evelyn. She burned it in Caroline's sink, watched the paper curl and blacken. Then she took off her wedding ring. The skin underneath was pale, soft. She'd worn the ring for 5 years. Now her finger felt light. Free. Caroline came home to find her sitting in the dark, turning the ring over in her palm. You okay? I'm testifying at the trial. I want to. Caroline sat beside her. You sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Evelyn looked at the ring. Gold band, diamond she'd never liked. He asked me to carry his guilt, make his crimes about us, about love, about me not being honest enough. And for a minute, I almost did. But you didn't. No, because it's not true. She set the ring on the coffee table. His choices are his, my choices are mine, and I choose to tell the truth. What changed? I stopped asking what I should have done differently, started asking what I need to do now. Evelyn looked at her friend. I need to testify. I need those victims to know they're not alone. I need to reclaim my story from the version Marcus is trying to sell. Caroline pulled her into a hug. Your grandmother would be so proud. Maybe. Or maybe she'd say I'm 5 years late. Evelyn's voice cracked. But I'm here now. That's all that matters. The next morning, Evelyn called Patricia. I'll testify, whatever you need, however long it takes. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? It's going to be brutal. Fisher will try to make you look vindictive, gold-digging, manipulative. Let him try. I have 5 years of documentation, bank statements, medical records from the panic attacks, witnesses who saw how he treated me. Her voice steadied. And I have the truth. That has to count for something. It does. It counts for everything. After she hung up, Evelyn looked at her reflection in Caroline's bathroom mirror. Tired eyes, too thin face, but something else too. Determination. She'd spent 5 years being quiet, being small, being the wife Marcus wanted. She was done. The trial would be public, painful, exposing, but she'd face it. Because the alternative, silence, hiding, carrying Marcus's guilt, was no longer an option. She was Evelyn Hayes Vandermere, archivist, heiress, survivor, and she was done apologizing for existing. The courtroom smelled like wood polish and fear. Evelyn sat in the witness box, hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The whole truth, nothing but. She'd been preparing for 3 weeks. Patricia had drilled her on every possible question, every angle Fisher might use. But sitting here, with Marcus 20 feet away and 200 people watching, all that preparation felt thin. The prosecutor stood. Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Walsh, no relation to Margaret, young, sharp, determined. Ms. Vandermere, how long were you married to the defendant? 5 years. And during that time, were you aware of his real estate investment fund? Vaguely. He mentioned it sometimes. Said he was helping people build wealth. Did he discuss the details with you? No. When I asked questions, he'd say I wouldn't understand. That business wasn't my strength. Jennifer pulled out a document. Is this your signature on a lease agreement for the Reynolds building? Yes. I sign all the leases for my properties. Did you know the defendant was telling investors he owned this building? Not until the FBI showed me his fund materials. How did that make you feel? Fisher stood. Objection, relevance. Your Honor, the defendant's pattern of deception toward his wife is directly relevant to his pattern of deception toward investors. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Ms. Vandermere. Evelyn looked at the jury, 12 faces watching her. I felt stupid, like I should have known, should have paid more attention. But you did pay attention, didn't you? Tell the jury about the quitclaim deed. Evelyn described it. The document Marcus had tried to get her to sign. His insistence it was routine, her refusal. Why didn't you sign? Because I read it. It would have transferred ownership of the Reynolds building to him. That's not a lease renewal. What happened when you refused? He got angry. Said I didn't trust him. That married couples should share everything. That I was being paranoid and controlling. Jennifer's voice softened. Ms. Vandermere, did the defendant control your finances during your marriage? Yes. How? Evelyn's throat was dry. She sipped water. He gave me an allowance, $2,000 a month for personal expenses. Everything else went through accounts he controlled. Did you have access to those accounts? No. Did you know how much money he was spending? Not until after, when I saw the credit card statements during discovery. Jennifer displayed them on the screen. $47,000 monthly. Dinners at restaurants Evelyn had never been to. Hotel rooms, jewelry she'd never received. The affair documented in American Express charges. Ms. Vandermere, you own properties worth over $300 million. Why did you accept a $2,000 allowance from your husband? This was the question, the one that mattered. Because I was testing him. I wanted to know if he could love me without my money. And then, she paused, found her courage. And then the test became a trap. I'd committed to the lie of who I was pretending to be. The longer it went on, the harder it was to tell the truth. I was afraid if I revealed everything, he'd divorce me, take half, ruin me publicly. Were you afraid of him? Yes. Physically? Sometimes. He grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise, cornered me during arguments. After the gala, he came to my hotel with a gun. Marcus's jaw clenched. She didn't look at him. But mostly I was afraid of losing control, of being dismissed, diminished, erased. Evelyn's voice cracked. He was very good at making me feel small. Jennifer let that sit. Then, Ms. Vandermere, why are you paying back the fraud victims? Because it's the right thing to do. It's not your legal responsibility. No. But he used my buildings to convince people his fund was legitimate. My property, my name, indirectly. I can afford to make them whole. They can't afford to lose everything. That's $87 million. I know. Why do it? Evelyn looked at the gallery, at Stephen Park, at the couple who'd lost their retirement, at faces she'd met over the past month, people whose lives Marcus had destroyed. Because someone should, and I can. That's enough. Jennifer sat down. Fisher stood slowly. He had that lawyer smile, sympathetic, poisonous. Ms. Vandermere, you've painted quite the picture of yourself as a victim. But let's talk about what you actually did. You deliberately deceived my client about your wealth, didn't you? I used my legal name and maintained privacy about my assets. That's not deception. You let him believe you were poor. I let him believe what he chose to believe. I never lied about my financial situation. He never asked. Convenient, Fisher paced. So you set a trap, let my client fall in love with who he thought you were, married him under false pretenses, and now you're surprised he felt pressure to succeed? Patricia stood. Objection, argumentative, sustained. But Fisher had planted the seed. Evelyn could see it in some jurors' faces. Doubt. Ms. Vandermere, you claim you were afraid of my client, yet you stayed for 5 years. Why? Because leaving an abusive relationship is complicated. Because I hoped he'd change. Because I was documenting everything. I'm building a case to protect myself. Or because you were waiting for the perfect moment to publicly humiliate him and claim victim status. Anger flared hot in her chest. I didn't humiliate him. He humiliated himself by committing fraud. You revealed your identity at a public gala, in front of his business associates, deliberately destroying his reputation. I revealed my identity because your client was mocking me for being poor. The hotel manager addressed me by my actual name. I didn't plan it. How convenient that it happened at the exact moment. There was no perfect moment, Mr. Fisher. Every moment with your client was a calculation. Stay quiet, stay small, maybe survive another day without being torn apart. Her voice rose. I'm done pretending that was my fault. Marcus chose to defraud investors. Marcus chose to lie. Marcus chose to control and diminish me. Those are his choices, not consequences of my privacy. The courtroom was silent. Fisher shifted tactics. You're paying back the victims, $87 million. That's quite generous. Yes. Almost like you feel guilty. I feel responsible for cleaning up a mess made with my property. That's not guilt. That's accountability. Or perhaps you're trying to buy sympathy. Make yourself look like the hero. Evelyn met his eyes. I don't need to buy anything, Mr. Fisher. I already own half the buildings in this city. What I'm buying is peace of mind and justice for people your client destroyed. Fisher had no response to that. The trial lasted 6 more days. Investor testimony, FBI agents explaining the money trail, Marcus's business partners turning on him to save themselves. Marcus never took the stand. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Evelyn sat in the hallway with Patricia, Carolyn, and Dr. Chen, waiting. However this goes, Patricia said quietly, you did everything right. Doesn't feel like it. It never does, but you told the truth. That matters. The bailiff appeared. Jury's back. They filed into the courtroom. Marcus looked smaller in his suit, defeated. The jury foreman stood. On the count of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of securities fraud, guilty. On the count of money laundering, guilty. 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 Every charge. Marcus's head dropped. His lawyer touched his arm. The judge set sentencing for 6 weeks out. The defendant will remain in custody. This court is adjourned. As they led Marcus away, he looked at Evelyn one last time. She couldn't read his expression. Didn't try. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. "Ms. Vandermere, how do you feel about the verdict?" She stopped. Patricia tensed beside her, but Evelyn shook her head. "It's okay. I'm relieved. Justice was served, and I'm grateful to the jury for seeing the truth." She paused. "My focus now is on the victims, making sure they're compensated, helping them rebuild." "Are you glad your husband is going to prison?" "I'm glad he's being held accountable. That's different from being glad." She chose her words carefully. "I hope he uses his time to reflect on the harm he caused, to become someone better. But that's his journey, not mine." "What's next for you?" Evelyn thought about her grandmother's office, the foundation, the museum, the life waiting to be built. "I'm going back to work. I have buildings to manage, a foundation to run, and manuscripts to catalog. That's enough." The Vandermere Foundation's spring gala was smaller this year, more intimate. Evelyn had restructured everything, less flashy fundraising, more direct impact. She stood in the Grandview ballroom wearing a dress she'd chosen herself. Simple, elegant, hers. The Investor Restitution Fund had paid out its final checks last week. $87 million returned. Some victims had cried. Others had simply said thank you and walked away. Stephen Park had used his returned investment to start a financial literacy nonprofit, teaching people to spot fraud, protect themselves. The couple who'd lost their retirement had bought a small house in Vermont, sent her a photo. One by one, lives rebuilt. Marcus had been sentenced to 22 years. She'd watched from the gallery as the judge delivered the sentence, felt nothing but tired relief. He'd written her twice from prison. She'd returned both letters unopened. Some doors needed to stay closed. "Ms. Vandermere," Thomas approached with champagne. "The board is ready for your speech." "Thank you, Thomas." She walked to the podium. The room quieted. 8 months ago, I stood in this ballroom and told you I was afraid of failing, afraid of my grandmother's legacy, afraid of being seen." She smiled. "I'm still afraid sometimes, but I've learned that fear doesn't have to stop you. It can just be something you carry while you do the work anyway." She looked around the room, at faces she knew, respected, trusted. "This foundation has distributed $12 million in grants this year. We've funded 3 women's shelters, on 2 financial literacy programs, and a legal aid clinic for domestic abuse survivors. Next year, we'll do more." She paused. "Because that's what my grandmother taught me. That wealth is a responsibility, that power is a tool, and that the only legacy worth leaving is the one built on truth." The applause was warm, genuine. After the speeches, Caroline found her at the bar. "You okay?" "Yeah, actually, I am. Dr. Chen told me you finished cataloging the Morrison collection. 20 years of work." 22 technically, but yes. Evelyn sipped her champagne. "It's going on permanent display next month, open to the public." "Your grandmother would love that." "Maybe, or maybe she'd tell me I'm spending too much time on old books and not enough on real estate." Evelyn smiled. "But I'm doing both now." "No, that's the point." Margaret Walsh joined them, leaning heavily on her cane. "Excellent speech, dear. Your grandmother would be proud, though she'd have kept it to 3 minutes. She was efficient that way." Evelyn laughed. Actually laughed. "You're probably right." "Of course I'm right. I'm 73. Margaret's eyes twinkled. "Now, I have someone I want you to meet. He's a professor at Columbia, studies medieval manuscripts. Brilliant, single, terrible at small talk, but lovely once you get past it." "Margaret, I'm not matchmaking. I'm networking. There's a difference." She gestured across the room. "Dr. James Bennett. He mentioned wanting to study your Morrison collection. Very respectful young man. Never married. I checked." Caroline grinned. "That's absolutely matchmaking." "Fine, I'm matchmaking." "Sue me." Margaret patted Evelyn's arm. "But you don't have to meet him if you don't want to. You've had enough of men for a lifetime, I imagine." Evelyn looked across the room. saw a man in glasses examining one of the historical photos on the wall. He looked completely absorbed, oblivious to the party around him. Something about that felt familiar, safe. "Maybe later," she said. "Right now I just want to enjoy this." "Enjoy what?" Evelyn gestured to the ballroom. The Foundation's work. Her life, finally hers. All of it. Later that night, Evelyn stood in her new apartment, a smaller place in a building she'd bought last month, not the penthouse, somewhere without ghosts. She'd kept one photo of Marcus, their wedding day, his smile, her hope, the future they'd never have. She looked at it for a long moment, then filed it away in a box marked Closed Cases. Tomorrow, she'd meet with the museum board about expanding their acquisitions budget. Next week, a foundation site visit to the new women's shelter. The week after that, coffee with Stephen Park to discuss his nonprofit's expansion. Her calendar was full. Her life was full. She was enough, had always been enough, and finally, blessedly, she believed it. Evelyn turned off the lights and went to bed. Outside her window, the city glowed. Buildings with her name on the deed, standing tall against the night sky. Her grandmother's legacy, her responsibility, her life, and it was exactly what she'd make of it.